time to go through all of his wonderful presentation. So welcome to you all. This is our February virtual meetup. And my name is Rachel McCool, and I'm going to be your host today. And so we're just really happy to have you here with us. Some of you have been with us before. Some of you may be new to our virtual meetups. So just really, really happy to have you here. Again, as I've mentioned to some of you who joined us a little bit early, just pop into the chat and say hi. Tell us where you're from, what kind of business you have, whatever else you'd like to tell us about yourself. Just really great to see all of you and have you join. So we're gonna do a quick intros, and then we'll have Philip get into presentation. So just like quick intro about myself. I live in San Francisco. A couple of you I see are from San Francisco that are joining today, which is awesome. And I've been with GoDaddy now for about 6.5 years. And so I manage different community experiences and programs like these virtual meetups that we bring to you every month. And so I'm here with two of my wonderful coworkers. I'm here with Jesse and Jonathan from GoDaddy. And I'm going to first have Jonathan introduce himself and then have Jesse introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Graziano. I work on the social media team here and work on our community activations. I'm going to be in the comments today, providing some information and answering. Please be active in the chat. I would really love to engage with a lot of you and hear what you were thinking about the presentation as it's happening.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jesse Wilson. I also, as with everybody else except Philip, I work at GoDaddy. I've been with GoDaddy since 2009. I'm a community manager and platform manager, and so I do a lot of things, but most of what I've been doing in the last few years has been managing community and stuff like that. I work directly with Rachel, and we manage the community site, which we'll drop a link to later in the chat. But yeah, I live in Phoenix, been here for quite a while. And I'm going to be, I won't be on camera and screen, but I'll be in the chat with Jonathan and stuff. So I'm going to go, but that's enough about me. I'm going to go and give you a little bit of an overview of the platform. If this is your first time, I want to make sure that we point out a few things to you. So the one thing that I want to say for sure so hopefully everybody hears this, we will for sure record this. In fact, we are recording right now. We will share out the recording sometime next week. So if you come late, well, if you come late, you probably won't hear this, but I will pin a message to the top of the chat so that people get that information. That said, as we're talking about chat, I just want to make sure that you're aware there is a chat column over on the right. It's a little tab. You click that. There's general and in DMs right now. I'm actually going to enable something called QA right now. And what that does is in the chat column, you can chat with each other, share your information, say, oh, wow, that was a great point, Philip, things like that. But the QA section is going to be a place for you to ask questions. So if Philip says something really interesting or thought-provoking, or you're not sure about, you want to ask a question, please use that area to ask the question. You can also vote in there for questions that you're like, you don't have one, but you think, oh, that's a great question. I'd love to hear the answer to that. Please do that so that we can know how to, at the end of the presentation, Philip and Rachel will get back on and go through those questions. And so the order they're in will probably be how we'll go through and do that. So please use that section. And then, so we got the chat. And one more thing about the chat that I wanted to highlight is that if you click on a message, there's a little, or if you hover over it, there's a little emoji thing. You can use reactions. If you see something that's cool, go ahead and use that. That's what those are for. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that those are there. So hope everybody enjoys the time. We've known Philip for a long time and he's super awesome. So just listen to what he has to say and it'll be really good.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. And totally agree about Philip. And as far as questions, yeah, feel free, like Philip's going to say a lot. And, again, react if there's something that he talks about, you're like, that is really awesome. Put it in the chat, let him know. But, you know, if any questions, and don't worry about if you feel like the question seems kind of, you know, you're not sure, just pop it in there anyways, and we'll take as many questions as we can. So one thing else before we get started, Jesse had mentioned our GoDaddy community. You know, check that out. It's community.godaddy.com. Jesse will drop that into the chat. It's a really good place to get information and help. Also, I want to point out that we have a LinkedIn group. I know some of you are members because I see your names here already, but you know, join that because it's a great place to connect and share tips, updates, ideas, et cetera, et cetera. And then 3 times a month, we meet for 30 minutes to an hour to just hear small business success stories and kind of talk about what's going on with your businesses. So it's really great group of people. Philip is a member, and you know, we'll add the URL to the chat so you guys can join if you haven't joined already. So our goal of these meetups every month is to bring you great topics and presenters with, you know, practical information and tips for your business. So today we're going to talk about how to create an online marketing strategy for your business. And I can't tell you how delighted I am to have Philip Levine here with us today. First of all, Philip is a very successful business person and a really good guy. He not only runs his business, which he's going to tell you about, but as a customer of GoDaddy, he is also our top contributor to our GoDaddy online community. And he spends a lot of time helping other people answer questions about GoDaddy's products and services, as well as, you know, small business questions. So again, as I mentioned, you definitely need to check out our community. And I've known Philip now, I think Philip for at least 4 years. And I'm just so appreciative of all of what you do and to help others. And he is highly respected by his peers of other small business owners. And I know that you're going to learn so much from him today. So let's go ahead and get started. Philip's going to present for around 30 minutes, and then we'll take as many questions from you as we can get to. So Philip, please go ahead and get started.
Great. And just to confirm that you're able to see the slide deck?
We are. Thank you.
Great. So welcome, everybody. Rachel, thank you for that introduction. How to create an online marketing strategy for your business. I am Philip Levine. I am president of my company, South Florida Web Advisors. So before we get started, just a little bit about myself. And let me start off by saying, as Rachel pointed out, I'm a customer of GoDaddy, not an employee, and the views in the slides shared today reflect my own opinion of not those of GoDaddy. So now that I've gotten that little piece of housekeeping out of the way about myself, I've been building websites and managing websites since 1997. This is all that I do. I have a passion for this. I love doing it. My education background is in management information systems with a certificate or specialty in e-business. So have a lot of experience in helping translate things for both developers and for executives. I've been running the business on my own since 2014. And currently I manage and support 150 plus direct clients, and then through some agencies that I work with, an additional 300 plus websites. And you may say, well, how can a single person manage 450 plus websites? Well, GoDaddy's tools do help me do that. So let's get into this and take a look at what are we going to be learning today? What are some of our goals? We're going to look to see how to differentiate the platforms, understanding what works best for you and your business. We'll see some examples. We'll use some use cases to see how the different platforms can work with each other. And then we'll just wrap it all up and talk about how this can all enhance your business and help with driving sales on your website. As Rachel mentioned earlier, and Jesse mentioned, we have the Q&A session at the end, and you please feel free as I'm going through, drop Q&A questions in there, and I will get to them at the end. Also, as we're going through, I'll ask some questions that you can reply to in the chat. So let's see, what do we need to have to do online marketing? Well, the first thing that we need is a website. Then we need domain-based email. And what I mean by this is instead of using something at gmail.com, something at AOL.com, that you have, for example, info at your domain. It makes it look more professional, even if it's just forwarding to those other accounts at Gmail or AOL or elsewhere. It's very important, though, to have domain-based email. Next thing is having social media accounts. This is where you're going to be posting different things to drive traffic back to the website. And something I like to include with this, but it's really an optional piece, is what I refer to as a blast email account or system. This could be thought of if you've heard of MailChimp or Constant Contact, or GoDaddy has their own emailing system as well. You don't necessarily need to do email as part of this, but I recommend it as something to think about including. So one of the first things I like to say is, well, what are some of the social media platforms that are out there? This list that I have up on the screen right now are some of the big ones. There are a number of other ones out there that are also used. Some of these can be for specialty things. Some could be for just doing chat. There are some vertical things that developers use, a number of different platforms that are out there. So one of my first questions, and I'd like to see what people say in the chat here, is, do I need to use all of these platforms? So go ahead in the chat here. Let's just see. We'll give it a minute. Say yes or no if you think that we need to use them all. And I can quickly see that very much people are saying no. And that is absolutely correct. You do not need to use them all. It will really vary based on what industry you're in and who you're targeting in terms of a vertical market, in terms of your audience. Who you're targeting will determine what of these platforms you use. Now, I just rambled off a bunch of different platforms there, and it's like, well, wait, how do I use these, or what should I use each one of these for? So I'm going to leave this up for just a second. This is a graphic that I was actually given about 10 years ago or more, so some of these may not even be in use anymore. But this is taking an example of somebody is eating a donut, and what you would post to each of the different platforms as you're eating that donut. As it says, like on Twitter, Twitter's always been about the hashtag, so it's, I'm eating a hashtag donut. Facebook, you're saying you like the donuts. And so it gives you an idea that here, just eating a donut can be presented in a number of different ways depending on which platform you're using. So this is where, depending on who your target market is and what you're looking to do with your online marketing, you can present things in a very different way to different audiences. And it's very important that as you're using the different platforms to keep that in mind. So then comes, I talked about earlier that, oh, you need a website, you need social media. Well, so the question then becomes, why do I need a website and social media? The short answer on this is, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you have very little control over how those platforms display your content. And if they decide to completely change everything up tomorrow, it's important to work with them, but a website is yours. You control what template you're using, you control what content, you control where that content is used and what you do with it. So it's very important that you're using both, because that way you're able to leverage what's best of each. The other reason why is social media, for example, many of the platforms today have shopping cart functionality, but you may not be able to do coupons, you may not be able to do lots of different shipping options or payment options. So again, you're going to be more limited on the features and how the platforms work versus what you can do on your own website. And I say social media should be what you're using to drive traffic to your website. So now that I've sort of given you that high level introduction of some of the platforms and talk about needing a website, so where do we go from here? How do I start? Where do I start? So the first thing I will often say to a new client as I'm working with them on doing this is, who is your audience? Are you looking for other businesses? Are you looking for consumers? who are you looking for? Who are you looking to interact with? If you're a storefront or have a physical presence, are you looking to get people to walk into your store? Are you trying to just let people know who you are, driving sales? The next thing I look at is to say, what are others in the same industry or vertical market doing? So I'll start with an example here. A real world example is one of my clients is a dry cleaners. They have a few storefronts. They have one factory for doing all the dry cleaning. And they said to me when we first started working together, they said, well, you know, we want to build our online presence. We want to build our online audience. And so I said, okay, well, let's see what the other dry cleaners in the area are doing. And where I am down here in South Florida, we probably have at least within 5-10 minutes, probably have a dozen different dry cleaners. And we started looking online. And other than some of the larger national franchise-based dry cleaners, the local mom and pop shops really were not doing very much. They were maybe doing a happy holidays, a thank you to our community. If they did a fundraiser for somebody or were involved with something, they did that. But they really were not doing any advertising. They weren't doing any sales or specials through Facebook. So I said, okay, we have an opportunity because we're going to do something different than just posting once a quarter sort of thing when there's a national holiday. So it's important to look to see what others in your same industry are doing to see what you should be doing, sometimes the same, other times doing differently. And the last thing that I like to say when we're starting out is, are we looking to do brand awareness or conversions? And what I mean by this is, are we trying to just let people know who we are and that we're here, or are we trying to actually drive to get more sales? And we might be trying to do both. So we might be doing two different campaigns online. And there isn't a right or wrong to this. It's just based on what you're looking to do for your business. So now that we've gotten started, we've identified who our audiences are, the next question I often get is, well, wait a second. Can I do this for free? Do I have to pay for this? And that sort of leads into some additional questions here. Is the first thing is, how large is your current following? If you only have 10 people who follow you on Facebook and you put up a Facebook ad, only those 10 people are going to really see it. So some of it depends on how big your following is to start with. The other thing I often look at is to say, well, what would you consider a successful campaign? And this goes back to what I was saying earlier is, are you looking for conversions or brand awareness? Is if you currently have 10 followers on Facebook and you say, well, look, we want to get to 20. Well, okay, that's great. So, you know, how are you trying to measure the return on, if you're going to pay for something, how would you measure, is it successful? I will tell you, most of the campaigns that I've done through Facebook and Twitter are all just viral campaigns and getting people to share things, which leads into my last point here, is that if you have a large audience in terms of your contact base, even if they haven't followed your page, just in your personal page, in your LinkedIn accounts, wherever you might be, if you have a large enough audience, you may actually get a better reach and better engagement by sharing it through that network than paying. And the reason that I say that is, oftentimes people that you're friends with that like the things that you do will then have other people that like the things that you do. So therefore, you're more likely to get a stronger target market by going that route. So we've now discussed, okay, we've gotten started. Do we have to pay for it? Yes and no. So, okay, well, what do we do now? And the next step that I say here is, we want to create a schedule. And this leads into saying, well, how often do we want to post? And the first thing that I often say is, whatever you decide on, just be consistent. If you say, I'm only going to post once a month, that's fine. Just post once a month. If you're going to post every other week, great, post every other week. It's important to be consistent. Now, there are a number of different platforms out there, some paid, some free, that allow you to schedule the post and will automatically post for you. Additionally, there's integrations to websites that can help with this as well. One of the things that I often recommend to clients that are just starting out with this, whether they're doing social media posts or if they're doing blogs, is take a week, 2 weeks, and develop all the content over those week to 2 week period. And you may post those over a 3-4 week period. You may post them over a few month period, but this way you're not having to think on the fly and really, spend a lot of time doing it on the fly. You do it all ahead of time and then you schedule it out. One of the things I also find is very helpful is making the content relevant and relatable. And what I mean by that is, depending on what your business is and what you're posting is, if it's around Valentine's Day, which was a few weeks ago, have it be around that. Next up, one of the next holidays that all the ads seem to target is St. Patrick's Day. So when you're thinking about maybe if you're doing a campaign for March, you're going to do St. Patrick's Day. And so make it relevant to what's going on at the time of year or in your community. And that will also help people better engage with the postings. Now, everything I've been talking about is online. However, offline marketing plays a big part in this as well. And one of the things you'll see on this page here is a QR code, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. So in terms of offline marketing, go to the people in your address book, go to the people who walk into your store, go to the people that you interact with, and ask them to sign up, follow, like, get engaged with your online presence so that way they can see when you post things. Giveaway. One of the things that I've seen be very successful is if you do a contest or give a discount for signing up, that will encourage people to sign up. Could be something as simple as get $5 off your next order, or we're giving away a cell phone. Here's a great example of somebody who's trying to do some brand awareness. This was actually GoDaddy. GoDaddy was trying to do some brand awareness for their pro program. And so I was at one of the conferences they were at, and one of the things that they were doing was that if you took a selfie, posted it to Twitter, and did a hashtag of GoDaddy Pro, they were then doing at the end of the conference a giveaway and randomly selecting from one of the people who posted. So here now, it was a way that people could promote themselves, but also build brand awareness of GoDaddy Pro. And that's where those hashtags can be very helpful. Inform, put up signs. Again, using that example I was just working with the giveaway, they had signs up all over their booth about the instructions of how to do this. If you have a storefront, put up signs, follow us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, so forth. And then come to use, which is the use QR codes. In this day and age, and this is one of the things that QR codes have actually, in my opinion, have made a resurgence, that they've been around for a long time, but they weren't really heavily used. And now that we've gone to touchless, to not having paper menus when you go out, you have a QR code. And it was pointed out to me when I was showing somebody this presentation, they were like, well, while a lot of people may know how to use a QR code, not everybody will. So I have this little illustration here that if you open up your cell phone, open up the camera, and hover over the QR code, you should get a little thing that says, click to open in the web browser. And if you were to scan the QR code that you actually see on this page, it would open up my website. So that is how you're able to leverage QR codes. And what you would do is you would use it to go directly to your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or sometimes it's to go to a sign-up page. Sometimes it's rather than just a liking of the social media, what you could actually do is have it go to a form on your website where you collect information and use it from that perspective. So this actually leads me into talk about bringing people to a website. Website integration. Many of the websites, the clients that I work with, many of them have brochure-based websites. So sort of thing, we set up the website and once or twice a year we do some new content, but other than that, we don't really touch the website. Well, one of the things that I've done with them is to integrate their social media into the website. And what I mean by that is that whether it be a Facebook feed or it's an Instagram wall, this way, as they're doing more on social media, which in some cases is on a daily or weekly basis, we put that on the website, so this way it keeps the website looking fresh. Also, inversely, what we can do is for those that write blogs and do different postings, maybe have new products, we can actually have the website automatically post to the different social media channels. And as I mentioned earlier, different social media platforms may be used for different purposes. So depending on what you're trying to convey and the audience you're trying to reach, you may post to different places. Again, having social media drive traffic to your website is very important, but it can also supplement the content on your website without having to make updates within the website itself. So I've talked about the blogs, I've talked about postings, but it's like, well, wait a second. How do I develop this? Where does this content come from? And one of the big things that I say here is templates, templates, templates. And what I mean by this is whether you're doing an email newsletter, whether you're designing a website from scratch, whether you're doing a newsletter, many of the software products that are out there have templates to get you started, where very oftentimes they'll have a complete flyer designed where all you need to do is click on the boxes and replace the text with your text, and it has the fonts all set. It definitely speeds up creating the content. Additionally, many of these templates, because they have sample content in there, it can give you design direction. One of the things I often will do with new clients when I'm building out a new website for them is I'll find a template that's on one of the major template sites and it has a lot of sample content in it already, and I say, okay, don't even think about writing things from scratch. Look at this template and see that we have 3 boxes on the home page that each have a 2-sentence description for a service. I need you to pick 3 services and give me a 2-sentence description for each one. It makes life thinking about what you're doing with the content much, much easier and can deploy it much faster. The next thing that I recommend is finding someone local who can work with you. And the reason that I say this is very often a lot of the things that we're doing are local to our own communities, our own markets. And what may work for me down here in South Florida isn't going to work for somebody in Texas, isn't going to work for somebody in Switzerland, because our local communities are each a little bit unique. So having somebody local who knows that community can be very helpful in making sure you're wording things that work well for that community. And oftentimes those things can scale and work globally as well. But as I said, it's very helpful to start local. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, is look at what others are doing. The best compliment, the flattery is best compliment to imitation there. So look at what others are doing, because this can tell you things that what you should replicate, and also identify areas where, if they're not doing it already, that could be opportunities. And again, I like looking at both the local area and also outside the local area, because sometimes it can give you ideas that the locals haven't already thought about. So great, we've put this all together. We've started to go and put our content up. So the next question that I get, and oftentimes the answer that folks want is immediately, but is, how soon will I see the results? Well, the general rule of thumb that I always tell people is 3 to 4 months. And you may be scratching your head and saying, 3 to 4 months, that means I really got to work at this, or I have to hire somebody for a long time. Well, unless you have an audience that you've already built and already know that as soon as you post something, you're going to get, let's say, 50% of the people who see it are going to click on it right away. And of that, you're going to get another 50% of that who follow through with purchasing something. Until you get that audience, you're not going to see the results right away. The schedule, how often you're posting things, the content, what you're asking for will play a role in how soon this will all happen. Again, if you're just trying to build brand recognition, you need to repeat over and over again. There was an old marketing saying that somebody once told me, was that they were doing a postcard campaign, and they said they had to send 1 postcard a week for 6 weeks. And by the 4th week was when they actually started getting phone calls from the postcards, because people would see it, they would just throw it in the trash, or it would sit on their counter. It's it's that repetitiveness over a period of time. And again, depending on what you're doing, this will vary, but general rule of thumb is 3 to 4 months. And I mentioned earlier about paying. Paying can accelerate this a little bit, but my experience is that it just increases the number of people that have seen the material. It doesn't necessarily make it that you have people that are converting sooner. So now that we've talked about the ads, we've talked about how soon we'll get the results. Now I want to take a look at a couple of quick case studies. And the first one is using videos on your website. I think putting videos on a website is great. It's interactive content. But the two main platforms that are out there are Vimeo and YouTube. And people have come to me and said, well, wait, which should we use? YouTube very often is free and you're able to do a lot with it. Vimeo, you got to pay for. And I say, the first answer I say is use both. Here's why. When you embed a YouTube video on your website, years ago, you could put a little piece of code in there and it wouldn't show you any other videos at the end of it. It wouldn't show you any other links. It would end at the end of the video. Can't do that anymore. When you get to the end of a YouTube video, if you've embedded that on your website, all of a sudden, depending on the size of the video, you're going to see anywhere from 4 to maybe 12 other videos from other providers that could be completely unrelated to what your website is about, could be a competitor even. And so I say, if you're going to put something on your website, you want to make sure you have more control over the content. So this is where I say use Vimeo, because when you use Vimeo, you can take off all the branding. You can also restrict what websites that video will show on. But just a minute ago, I said use both. So what I recommend, and this goes to one of my clients is an author, a PhD, and he does a weekly blog with a video piece of it. So what we do with his video is, for embedding it on the website, we use Vimeo. This way we don't have to worry about ads. We control the privacy settings on it. But from a viral perspective, he has a very large following, very large audience. We put it on YouTube, so it's then publicly accessible. He can then get the search optimization from having it on YouTube and having links back to the blog entries from YouTube. And then also from statistics, he's able to see, well, wait, where are people viewing this video? Are they more on Vimeo? Is it more on YouTube? And get some ideas. Also, YouTube is a little bit easier to share the video, so that way he gets some additional statistics that way. So again, it's really going to depend on where you're going to be putting that content and what it's going to be used for. Vimeo, as I mentioned, you can restrict what sites it's showing up on. So this is actually then a revenue opportunity that you can create content and then sell that content and only allow it to be embedded on sites where you're selling it. I know that there's a lot of travel folks who will do that. And again, it just is a matter of what the content is and who the audience is. I've been talking a lot this afternoon, morning about audience. Audience is very important in this whole process because, again, if it's a B2B, you may not be using some of the platforms because businesses don't use those other platforms. So talking about posting leads me into my next slide here, is posting of photos. And I actually, as I did this, it should be posting of photos and things like TikTok videos. So first thing I say is post to multiple platforms, because depending on what you're looking to do and who you're advertising to, the photos may be different. And I'll give you a great example. Somebody that I was actually meeting with this morning, somebody who sells makeup, cosmetology products. And we were talking about how she markets her website. And so on Instagram, we want to post photos of the product, but maybe it has a border around it. It feels more like a ad than just posting a photo. But one of the things I also talked about was the fact that she has sharing on her website. Well, I said, if you're going to have the sharing that people can share the products to Facebook and other things, have a version of the product photo and have your company logo on there. That way, when they've shared this product, you're getting the advertising. So depending on how you have things that are getting posted in different places, you're going to post things differently. But that actually leads into the next point is, are these ads or are these just product imagery? What is it? Because Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're very, very particular when it comes to guidelines, especially when it comes to ads. Whereas if you just have a product photo, yeah, you're usually pretty good. You say new arrival, that might be okay. You put click on this today for a 30% discount, it's going to get nixed as a violation because they don't want words, they want the product. So think about what you're doing, and is it an ad? Is it just showing the product? Which is the next point is, what is the purpose of it? Also, just think about, things like TikTok. Again, I mentioned to this individual that, maybe do a couple TikTok videos about how great, a product is. And it was interesting. They said to me, and they called in, they have some college students who are helping them out. And they said, the college students just told me I should get set up with TikTok. And I'm like, yeah, because you put up a 30-second video on TikTok, which then feeds into Instagram and Facebook, and all of a sudden you now have this viral thing. I said, I'm not a content creator. I'm not going to necessarily be the best person to tell you what current trend on TikTok to do. But this is a way to build an audience. So with all of that being said, let me do a little bit of a recap here. So first thing you need to do is identify your audience. Is it B2B? Is it business to consumer? Is it, is it your local neighbors? Who is your audience for what you're trying to do? Next, are you going for conversions or brand awareness? And it may be both. Are you looking to drive sales? Are you just trying to make people more aware of what you do and the services you have to offer, and just later on down the road, that'll lead to sales? So what are you trying to get out of what you're posting? Create a schedule. This is very important. As I said, whatever you do, be consistent. And if you put it and calendar it out, it makes life much easier, because then you give yourself deadlines for creating the content and knowing when it's going to go up and so forth. Work with a graphic artist, content writer is needed. I talked about using templates, that there are services out there, but work with somebody who does this as their specialty, because there are content writers, and I think some of them might even be in the room today, that do nothing but content writing for websites, for blogs, that if you say, hey, I can give you an outline, they can then interview you and take it to that next level. But they'll make sure that they get the words in there, that it's written well for the search engines and so forth. And the graphic artists can do things and make it look pretty and layers and so forth. And so definitely work with somebody who's a subject matter expert. Next is be realistic with your goals. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a 10-person audience to start with, and you're like, oh, I want to grow this to 1,000. Well, that's a great goal to have. But if you don't have a large audience to start with, and you don't have a large network, getting to 1,000 may take you a year. If you can get there in a month, great. If you can get there in a day, even better, obviously. But be realistic with what your goals are. And once you hit a goal, figure out what, create a next goal. And, it's okay to have stretch goals, but be realistic. And lastly, give a campaign time. As I said, 3 to 4 months is a good starting point of time, but don't expect. There's been very few campaigns that I've seen for online marketing that work overnight. The only time I've ever really seen a campaign work overnight is where one of the organizations I work with was doing some lobbying and was doing a call to action of contact your county commissioner. And it was a very timely thing. And that it was for a meeting that was happening the following week. This was something that was started on a Wednesday. The meeting was the following Tuesday. And yeah, that saw results, but it was very timely and it was an immediate thing. If it was just an ongoing thing, it takes time. And so that really wraps things up. At this point, I'm going to go into Q&A.
Philip, thank you so much. Really great practical information. I was just, thinking so much about how a lot of this can be very overwhelming, and there's been some great commenting going on in the chat, and we're going to take as many questions as we can get to. So again, if you guys have questions, please put them in the Q&A area so that Philip and I can get to as many of them as possible. But your point about things taking time, I know that can be really frustrating, especially like a newer business. It's like, I just really want to get this going. But you mentioned a point about networking. I think networking is really important, because one of the things that I hear a lot from, a lot of the GoDaddy customers that I meet that own small businesses is that they built up this network of people. Sometimes they trade business, sometimes they do business with each other, but just knowing other people who may be able to help you to grow your business is really, really important. So I'm going to do a push for joining our GoDaddy community and joining our LinkedIn group, because especially our LinkedIn group, really great group of people to get to know and share your businesses. And that's a great way to build up your audience. So let's get to questions. I'm going to start from the top, and Nick asks, what if you don't have an email list as you are just getting started?
Great question, Nick. And what I say on that one is that's where you need to, in your promotion, say, okay, we're going to do a giveaway. Give us your email. You get $5 off your next order. Or it could be your friends and family. Reach out to business associates that it may not be a customer list, but it's just networking. When I first started out, I reached out to some of the local IT companies. I didn't know them from anybody else, but I reached out to them and said, oh, I'm just starting out, wanted to introduce myself, and built my list that way. So some of it is the old-fashioned, quote unquote, cold calling, but it's, letting people know that you're around.
Yeah, I think, email is really interesting, because you made a couple of points about this of spamming, just being really careful about what content you put in email and making sure that it provides some kind of value. People don't always want an offer in every email. In fact, one of the things I get kind of annoyed about is pitches every time from a company. It's like, it's got like some kind of offer in it. Sometimes people like to just see like, what do you do? And then they then may get hooked into like looking for your emails in the future, and then maybe making the offer sometimes like the secondary factor, so that it's not so in your face.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go to the next question from Fred. And Fred wants to know, do you use a CRM to hold your database? If so, which one? And are there others you might recommend for startup or small businesses?
Sure. I actually don't have a specific CRM. I do have, GoDaddy has a great product that is free, which is called the Hub. It has a suite of business tools. A lot of it is focused around managing WordPress websites, but there's some project management, there's some invoicing, customer management. And I would say if you're just starting out, it's a great thing to do. I've been using various iterations of it over the years, and between that and just using QuickBooks for my accounting, and then my Google Workspace email and a lot of tags, that's really how I do my CRM management. But there are other platforms out there. It really depends on, sometimes if you're in a vertical market, there's some specific ones there, and just use what feels right for you.
Yeah, great advice. Again, I think that's a point about using what works best for you and your business. Although it is really good to get recommendations and see what other people are using and check them out, and then find something that really works for you. Okay, cool. Let's go to Barry's question. He wants to know, Philip, can you talk about the use of video and video blogs?
Yeah, I've only had this one client that I mentioned earlier that's doing their blog, and they're doing it as both a text write-up and a video that complements it. And in this day and age, people often sometimes they don't feel they have time to read, or they're in the car. And if you're, if you have a video, they can at least listen to it that way. And as I mentioned earlier, when you post things out to like a YouTube, you can then put links back to your website, which can help with search optimization because you're getting those backlinks in there. And you can also then post to Facebook and the other channels, and people can comment. Just got to watch the comments though. Sometimes you actually want to shut comments off depending on what you're posting about. So just keep that in mind as well.
That's a really important point, because I think there's, people sometimes don't pay attention to comments, and they can go negative pretty quick, and you just want to make sure that you're on top of that, responding to people's questions. Another great point about people listening in cars. I know I do that sometimes when it's like, maybe I have a drive for 3 hours and I'm like, I want to listen to something. Podcasting is a lot to take on for a lot of you who are especially running your businesses by yourself, but doing like short video clips and stuff, really good way to build your audience. Maybe it's a 5-minute or 10-minute tip. One of our members of our LinkedIn group does quite a bit of that. And, it's a really good way to build up an audience. Okay, so let's go to Heather's question, which is a really good one. She says, a company I work for has had the same website for 10 to 15 years. I've recently been working on updating it, but at this point, should we just redo the whole thing?
I would generally say that if you've had a site for 10 to 15 years and you really haven't updated it, probably time to do just a rebuild from the ground up. Modern design, modern code, more responsive, and just, I think you'll have an easier time versus trying to work on top of yourself of just updating what you already have. It's easier just to start fresh and import the relevant content.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, technology changes so quickly that it's really good to be able to be on the latest, greatest platforms, hosting, etc. So I'll do a plug for Philip. If you're interested, he'll give you contact information at the end of our meetup here, and, work with somebody really good. If you can't do it yourself, that's totally cool. But, by working with somebody who's an expert, I think you're going to have a really good website that can link to all these social channels and other areas that maybe you want to be in. Hey, so Barry has a quick follow-up. He said he's also interested in best practices to use video as a way to trigger conversions and ultimately sales. And I think you talked a little bit about that, but maybe you have a couple of other points that you could add.
Yeah, what I would say in that is, in your video production, is to have little calls to actions, pop-outs, things like that. That is what's going to help people to convert. The other thing that I've often found with videos, if you're using that as a means of advertising, is one of the things, just like in a podcast, is say, oh, please check out my website. Please, visit for more information. Sometimes it's you do a quick synopsis video, which is maybe a shorter video for the full thing. And then it's like, oh, you want the full thing? Give us your email. So those different things can help lead to those conversions.
Awesome. Great suggestions. So Anne is wondering, any recommended workflows so that you can post once and it goes out to Twitter, blog, Facebook, Instagram,
That's
et cetera, et cetera.
There are a couple different auto posting platforms out there and services. As I said, a couple of them are free that just limit how many you can do per week or per month. Some you pay for then. But use one of the platforms because it can do the schedule and you can do that. There are times where I would say it makes sense to have everything hit at the same time. There are other times, again, depending on who the audience is on each, sometimes it makes more sense to space it out and maybe do it over, let's say, a 3 or 4 hour period where it hits different platforms at different times.
Yeah, the other thing I would caution on is blasting out the same post to a bunch of different platforms, because you're going to potentially, your audience may be on a couple of those platforms and they're going to see the same post. And it comes across kind of like, I just saw that is exactly the same post.
Right.
I know it tends to be a little bit more work to try to tweak things and and have original posts. But to Philip's point, maybe you should pick just like one or two to focus on instead of trying to do it all. So, totally up to you on your business and your audience, but just try to think about that as you're creating content. Speaking of content and templates, Eric was wondering about if you had any suggestions on template providers. He
Sure.
says, does Canva count as a template provider?
Yes, that was the one that I was actually alluding to. Is Canva is definitely one. GoDaddy actually has something that's similar to Canva in their suite of tools. I apologize to the GoDaddy folks. I don't remember the exact name of it, but I know that GoDaddy has one in their suite of tools as well. Canva is the one that I've most worked with myself, though.
Yeah, our team can pop in the chat our GoDaddy tool if you're interested in knowing about that. Okay, great. So Heather has a really good question. So I've improved our Google page rankings quite a bit. So congrats, Heather, because that's really challenging. But we're not getting calls on construction industry. What am I missing?
That's where I would start to look at your Google Analytics to see what pages people are looking at, how long they're spending, and making sure you have different calls to action on your website. And I've had it where a page that somebody didn't even think about was showing up very high, and the page that they most wanted to have showing up was very low. And so they ended up redoing some of their content and layout of their site to better emphasize the target content that they were going for.
Yeah, the other thing that to mention is you guys should make sure you're on top of your reviews out there. I see where sometimes even when I'm looking for, some kind of business to do work on our house, sometimes the reviews are not great, and I think, I'm probably not going to use that person. Other times, like I've looked at reviews where I see that the company has actually made comments to all the reviews of whether it's thanking for a nice review or, not just commenting on the reviews. And I think that's extremely helpful. So don't underestimate reviews out there that people have left for you. And I would also say encourage your really good customers to leave you reviews. That's super important because people are looking for referrals, and reviews can play a really big factor in that. Okay, so going on to the next, Nick is asking, how do you find a great content provider? And I saw a bunch of people asking that in the chat.
That one's a little harder to define. A lot of it is doing a search for content writer in Google and asking questions. What sort of content have they written for in the past? Who do they write for? One of the content writers that I started working with a long time ago was a journalist that she did stuff for the local paper. And so she understood some of that conversational and reporting and so forth. So again, a lot of it's going to depend on your industry and just finding what people have done. And most content writers that I've worked with usually have a niche that they work on, and they talk about what they've worked on their websites.
Yeah, I hope all of you are on LinkedIn. And if you are, you might be able to find some good content writers on LinkedIn. Next month, we're going to have our virtual meetup on writing content again on LinkedIn by Lisa Stambaugh. Highly recommend you attend because she's done some really creative things with content on LinkedIn. So, again, check out what other people are doing and just like what they do for a living, because you might be able to find some really good people there. So we'll take a few more questions and then we'll be at the top of the hour. So Jill is wondering, how do I have my business email forward to my personal one so I don't have to check so many? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's all going to depend on what the email platform that you're using is. It varies. There are some free forwarding services, so you don't even need to have an Office 365 account. You just use one of the free email forwarding. I would just Google for email forwarding, and as I said, there's a number of different services. You put in what your domain is, you set some settings in the domain, and then you put in where you want to forward to.
Tip. Thank you. And Laura says, my business creates ads. How do you help business owners understand that it takes time to build momentum?
Yeah, that's just a matter of, emphasizing the point over and over again, saying, this is going to take a few months. This is going to take a few months. That's about it.
Yeah. I think, it's hard because people, again, want to see results right away. So last question we're going to take is from Diane. If you want to begin with a national audience to ultimately global, is it still best to work with a local developer?
That's a good point. In that case, I would say to try to find somebody who's more regional based or even, national to start with, because they're going to have some more of that expertise. Usually you can find somebody who works in a large region, and that they'll have more of the understanding working in multiple markets at the same time. Very good point on that one.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, the other thing is find somebody that you're really comfortable working with and that really understands your business objectives. I think that that's very helpful. And if you start working with somebody that just doesn't feel right, don't continue working with them. That's a large part of business success, right? Is finding those right partners that really get you and help you to be successful. And ultimately, they want to be successful too. Gail, by the way, Gail had put that Access has a course on how to make your own CRM. So thanks for that tip, Gail. That's really, really helpful. Hey, there are more questions. What we can do with Philip is we're going to be posting content into the GoDaddy community. We'll send out an email probably early next week with the recording. So, Philip, people are asking for you to add your contact info. If you could do that in the chat.
I can certainly do that.
That would be really appreciated. And then the other thing, huge request for you guys, is Jesse's going to pop in a survey. We would really appreciate you to fill out the survey. We want to hear from you about, what you like about the meetup. What do you think we could do better? Because we're always looking to improve upon the meetups. We want you guys to be here with us and feel like you're getting value out of the meetups. Thanks. So actually, Jonathan put it in the chat. So thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate that. So thanks, everybody. Our time's up. Just so appreciate you being here. Thank you, Philip, for all of your incredibly practical information. Appreciate you so much as a person. And again, just a reminder, if you haven't joined our LinkedIn group, joined our community, please do so. We'd love to see you. Again, I think a very important point about being successful in business is getting to know a bunch of other people who do maybe something similar or something different, but just sharing stories about what works and what you've tried that maybe doesn't work, and keep pivoting your businesses. So take care, everybody. And one last thing, with the questions that we didn't get to, Philip will answer those questions, and then we'll put them into the community so that you can see more of what Philip has to tell you about. So have a good rest of the day, and we'll hopefully see you next month.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.